Hello. It's nice and sunny. Now, give it 5 minutes. I've always been really open and honest about my mental health and the struggles. And the thing that I've found over the years is that it's really easy to label someone with a mental health issue, whether it be autism or ADHD or PTSD or bipolar, depression, anxiety, panic attacks. It's very easy to pigeonhole them and then to be able to judge people by how they've been diagnosed or labelled. Let me give you an example. I want you to close your eyes for a moment and just picture somebody with autism. And what comes into your mind? You might know someone with autism. You might not know, or you might not think you know anybody with autism. And you might be picturing Dustin Hoffman in Rain Man or something like that. But it's really easy to get the wrong impression of something when they've been judged or labelled or pigeonholed. Another example is ADHD. Everybody seems to have ADHD lately if you read the newspaper and health magazines and things like that. And it's not that everybody's got it, it's just that more people have been diagnosed with it because more people are talking about it. But again, close your eyes and picture what you think someone with ADHD looks like. It's quite difficult, really, when A, you might not think you know anybody that has that condition, or you might prejudge your idea of what someone like that looks like based on something that you've read or someone that you know. One thing I've found in my years of trying to deal with all the mental issue stuff is that a lot of people find it difficult to either understand or engage with people who suffer with mental health conditions. For some part, it's because they've never experienced it, either for themselves or live with somebody that does have to deal with it. Let's go back to autism, something that I was diagnosed with just over 10 years ago. And it's weird because it's a spectrum condition. Now, I don't mean a spectrum as like a line from like minimal to maximum. It's more like, I want you to picture a globe, a planet. And it's like a planet, so it's not just A to B, it's wide and deep and long and round. And it's not just the severity of autism, there's the types of triggers and the traits and how it affects you, and there's just so much to take into consideration. So it's impossible to call somebody autistic and have a fixed impression of what that person's going to be like. So some people might be severely autistic, as in they don't even speak, they're non-verbal, they have trouble understanding social cues, they're really affected by sensory overload, so bright lights, noise and smell and taste and things like that. And they have a really tough time in life. And then there's people like me, I'm really high functioning autistic. And that means, in layman's terms, really that I can be triggered by the same things. So I do have difficulty with bright lights. I do have difficulty in noisy, crowded situations. I struggle to understand social cues, body language, tone of voice, how to engage in conversation and things like that. But I'm more able to deal with that and cope with that than someone who's more severely autistic than I am. So there is this scale in that respect, but a lot of autistic people don't get triggered by things that other autistic people get triggered by. And that's why I think it's wrong to judge and label people with autism just based on one person's thought about it. When we lived on our narrowboat, some of the hardest triggers I had to deal with were engine noise and generators, and it's something that you can't really escape when you live on the canals. For most people, noise becomes quieter the further away it is. Your brain picks up on the distance, but for a lot of people with autism, including me, we hear everything at the same volume. Let me give you an example. We might be sat on the boat watching TV, and there's a boat. It might be moored maybe 100 feet away or more, but it's got its engine running, and my brain is making me hear that noise at the same volume as the TV, which is literally 3 feet in front of me. Add to that the sound of people walking past the boat talking, a tractor that might be 3 or 4 fields away, birds chirping, a lorry reversing maybe a mile away, aeroplanes, dogs barking. It all starts to trigger a panicky reaction. But I also feel that noise too, physically. I can actually feel sound. It's called synesthesia. So not only am I hearing that boat engine 100 feet away, I actually feel it as if I'm standing on the engine itself, that deep vibration and thudding that just runs right through my body. Add all this noise and the physical feelings together, and it can easily become overwhelming and trigger really bad anxiety and even meltdowns. There is a theme throughout autism though, and we do share a lot of the same traits, especially things like sensory overload and social problems. They can be quite stressful for anybody with autism, for people without autism sometimes. And the problem I've got is that later this year we've got something coming up where all of these triggers are going to be centered on one event. There's going to be a lot of people. It's going to be a lot of change to my routine. Sensory overload might become an issue. It's the wedding. That's one of the main reasons why we never had a wedding in the first place. I might come across on YouTube and on social media as a very confident, fluent speaking, easy conversationalist type person. Is conversationalist a word? I'll let you judge that one. I'm sure you'll tell me if it's not. But I'm really not. The autism is like this monster that just lives in my head, trying to ruin everything all the time. I gave up a long time ago going to parties and gatherings, weddings, funerals, baptisms and things like that. Because for many years, it was really tough. I'd always be in a corner, hiding away from the crowd, near the exits. And for the most part, I would end up running away at some point, literally running away from the event. Just walking out, away from Sean and going home, crying. And Sean would come home and I'd be sat in the house, crying my eyes out. Not because I was stressed, I was at the time that I ran out, but crying because I just felt ashamed that my own head could get me into that state where I felt like I had to run away and that people were laughing at me and thought I was mentally ill, weak, a coward. And I was ashamed, so I was hiding away in the house, crying and just ashamed of myself, feeling weak and like a coward. I am not a coward. It's taken me a long time to realise that and to accept and understand that. I was always a sensitive kid. I was bullied a lot at school. I never quite fit in anywhere. At home, I didn't feel like I fit in, and I never really fitted in at school, but I always felt different and I never quite understood what was going on. The problem is the people at school, and I think my parents didn't really help because I was getting bullied at school every single day. And I think my weakness and this being different, I felt ridiculed a little bit at home for it. So I never quite got that support. I always felt like the last one to be picked at games and then a little bit ridiculed for being different at home. It didn't help really when I got to adolescence, which I think is a really important part of anybody's life. Now, if you're autistic, you have ADHD, and you're gay, bisexual, being an adolescent and trying to cope with that, I think is going to be tough for anybody. But I didn't have that support. And when I reached adolescence, my parents divorced, which threw another psychological spanner in the works for me, really. And that was a really rough time because I was trying to revise for exams. I was trying to get into radio, it had always been my love ever since I was a kid. So I was trying to get on with all this, but my parents were divorcing, so there was lots of shouting and screaming and mum walking out and dad getting drunk every night and throwing things about and shouting and screaming and smashing things. And I kind of really felt left out, and I just wasn't getting any support at all. And I was forced to try and basically survive. I wish there was not really a happy ending, but some sort of good resolution to that, but there isn't. Mum just moved in with other guys and I was left at dad's. Dad eventually kicked me out. When I say kicked me out, I mean literally kicked me out. I came home from school one day and all my stuff was out on the street on the back of a van. Go and live with your mother. So I did that. She got a boyfriend, same age as me as I was at that age. I came home from work one day and same again, all my stuff on the street on a van. Go live with your dad. So I felt like I was being kicked about, and that's not good when you're struggling with your own internal stuff. And it's not nice to look back on either. It's something that almost every therapist I've ever spoken to wants to explore in a lot of detail. And revisiting those turbulent years always ends up leading me into a really deep depression. So it's something that I try not to consciously think about anymore. I think any undiagnosed autistic adolescent desperately needs stability, reassurance, love, support. But I genuinely feel, even today, 35 years later, that they weren't there during that vital time in my life. Over the years, I've tried to convince myself that it's not actually their fault. They had their own lives to lead. They deserve to be happy. But at what cost? It doesn't matter how much I try and justify their feelings, their right to live the life they wanted, their choices, their direction to move on in life. I can't help but feel sad and, I've got to be honest, angry that those choices really mess me up in many ways. And I even feel selfish for feeling like that. It's fair to say I don't have much of a relationship with my parents. They made their choices, and for the most part, those choices never took me into consideration. I think there's only so many times you can forgive someone. It doesn't matter how closely related they are. You have to understand at some point that it's just not worth that pain anymore. You can only be pushed away so many times before you really don't ever want to go back. It was shit, I'm not going to lie. It was actually shit. Looking back on it, it was shit. I'd be going to school or work, getting bullied, coming home, hiding in my room, listening to the shouting and screaming and smashing, and you just survive, and I think you get through it. And I think in a sick sort of way, looking back on it, it probably did give me skills in survival and how to cope. And I think the biggest thing that it taught me, especially after meeting Sean and his family, is that family isn't about blood. It really isn't about blood. It's about the people who love you. It's about the people who will do anything to see you smile. It's about the people who want you to be in their lives. It's about the people who love you for you. That took me a long time to work out. I know there's going to be a few medical professionals who disagree with this next bit, but to be honest, I've disagreed with a few medical professionals all my life. So here goes. I actually think some of those early experiences gave me some vital skills in life. Coping skills, survival skills. Not necessarily changing the way I see and deal with autistic triggers and anxiety and depression, because I think a lot of what I suffer now comes from back then. But I think it does teach you a lot about coping, about really just sucking it up and getting on with it. It's always going to be hard, but you can learn to live with hard sometimes. So if I hate parties, I'm crap at conversation, get really anxious about change and can't deal with sensory overload, Why on earth am I arranging a wedding where I'm probably just going to be enveloped by this blanket of unbelievable stress and anxiety, and I'll probably die from the stress? The truth is, Sean and I actually got married back in 2006. We had a civil partnership before then, but then when the law changed and we were allowed to get married, we decided to get married. The thing is, back then I didn't feel as strong as I do now. And we settled for, it's actually horrible looking back on it. It was this dreary registry office in West Yorkshire. And the only people that were there were me and Sean, my mum and Sean's dad. We signed a few papers in this horrible grey office that smelt like a solicitor's. And that was it, done. There was no photos, because if there was a photo, I would show you a photo. It's not even any photos. That's how depressing it was. Felt for years that we had to do it properly, and we're in a position where we can. But we've still got all these triggers and anxieties and all these guests that are coming that I've got to think about. So how are we going to get through it? One of my biggest problems is social anxiety. I find small talk a really big problem. It's not that I don't know what to say. It's just that in the moment, sometimes my mind just goes completely blank. If I'm talking to camera like this, or in a radio studio talking to a microphone, it just all comes out. It's like opening the damn gates and everything just flows out without an effort. But put me in front of an actual person and those gates just get closed and locked again. It's not just that though, it's things like social cues, things like body language, a person's tone of voice. Even with Sean now, after 30 years, I find it difficult to understand sarcasm from humour. It can be joking about something and I'll take it really personally. And that can be an issue on social media for a lot of people, because you can probably understand that it's very difficult sometimes to read into text. You can't tell whether they're joking or being serious, and it's a little bit like that with me with conversation. I find it difficult to read body language and the tone of voice. I also do go completely blank. You could walk past me in the street and you could be my best friend and I could just walk right past you and not see you. It's not me being ignorant, I just don't see people. My mind just goes sometimes. So if I've got a crowd of 100 people at a wedding, that frightens me a little bit. Now, the saving grace here is that the better I know somebody, the easier it gets, because as much as I was talking about not understanding whether Sean's joking or not sometimes, you do get used to a person and their personality. So I do pick up on that, and I know that Sean can take the mickey out of me a lot. So I know most of the time he's taking the mickey out of me. And a lot of the people going to the wedding, I know more than don't, if that makes sense. There's more people coming that I know than there is that I don't know. And the ones that are coming that I don't know, we'll just have to see how it goes, won't we? I think the next biggest issue is that sensory overload. So you can't have a wedding without music, can you? And lights and laughing and joking and dancing and shouting because the music's quite loud. That will get to me. But again, we've got a fix for that. The venue that we've chosen, most of you already know where it is, by the way, has got lots of rooms. So as well as the great hall where we're going to have the music and people dancing, there's going to be other rooms around the castle and the grounds outside. So there's always an escape for me. And for the other guests that might be not as much into loud music either and wants a little bit of peace and quiet. So I can get away from that. And just knowing that these rooms are there, that I can get away from it, helps me now, because I won't be going into the day nervous about what I'm going to do about that sensory overload. Another thing that really stresses me is change, especially change to a routine. Now, the wedding's slightly different because the wedding isn't routine. But luckily, Sean has trusted me to do most of the organising, which has been a kind of double organisation for me, because there's the venue, there's the catering, there's the flowers, there's the entertainment, there's everything that you've got to think about for a wedding. But what if the caterers don't turn up? What if the band don't turn up? What if the vicar decides to go on a TV reality show and becomes famous and doesn't want to do the wedding anymore? I know, extreme, but in my head it could all happen. So as long as I've got a plan, then again, it's something I don't have to worry about. For example, if the caterers don't turn up, I already know a really good pizza shop in the nearby village, and we can get a taxi and go down and pick 100 pizzas up. It's not going to happen. But if it's sorted in my head, then at least that unpredictability isn't something that I'm going to be worrying about on the day. It gives me more freedom in my head to just enjoy what's going on. I think the greatest fear and the biggest thing that I have to worry about is just becoming too overwhelmed on the day itself. Because we've got all the social stuff going on, we've got the sensory overload, we've got the changes to routine, maybe guests not turning up, little changes to this, that and the other. And I'm going to be trying my best just to suppress them. And we all know how bad suppressing things can be for your mental health and physical health. So I don't want to be doing that, but that's probably something that I'm going to have to do on the day to get through the day. And things will get overwhelming, emotionally overwhelming, because it's a wedding day. I'm going to be seeing friends and relatives and people that I haven't seen for years in some cases. So it is going to be very emotionally overwhelming, and I've got to try and suppress that just to keep focus and keep going through the day. So if you are going to the wedding and I disappear for half an hour, when I come back, please don't say, "You okay?" Just get on and, do you know what I mean? Get on with things. Enjoy the day. I'll be fine. No, I won't. Yes, I will. One of the good things about making all these plans to try and make it easier for me is that it also helps Sean. He'll relax knowing that I've basically covered as much as I think I can cover. But even better than that is it actually makes things easier for a lot of our guests as well. Because we've got guests coming that have anxiety, might be nervous. And so the plans I've put in place for me are also going to help them. We've got a table in the hall and some chairs at the service that are away from most of the other guests, kind of on the fringes. So you're not surrounded by people, you don't feel closed in or watched. And they're very next to the exit, so you can basically escape if you want to and nobody will know. So you don't have to feel embarrassed about leaving and getting some air and getting some deep breaths. You can just go. And I think, again, if you're an anxious, nervous person and you know that that's going to happen, that you're not going to be crowded by people and you can come in and out and get a breath when you want to without being noticed, means that you can go into it feeling a little bit more relaxed. You'll have access to the other rooms. So if you want to go out and just sit in one of the quiet rooms by yourself with another couple of people, the little anxious squad, I think, will be, you can do that. The whole day is aimed at letting the people who want to sing and dance and enjoy themselves to do that. But we can also escape and have a couple of moments to ourselves if we want to do that too. I think it really is all in the preparation. The more plans we've got in place before the wedding, the easier and less stressful it's going to be on the day. For me and for everybody else that's coming. I've actually put some bullet points, some little things that you might want to think about down in the video description. So if you are a bit nervous, maybe scared about meeting people you don't know, meeting us, being in a strange place, not knowing what's going on, I've put some points in the video description. It might be worth a read. It might be helpful for you, it might not. I read loads of things on the internet that are supposed to save anxiety and things, and I just click away within 5 seconds. It's like, no, this is rubbish. We're also going to be giving all the guests a schedule to let them know what's happening on the day, what time, whereabouts, what to expect, seating arrangements and things like that. Because again, I think if you come into the wedding and you're nervous about it, it's better to have as much detail as you can get. Fear of the unknown is usually worse than reality, isn't it? When you don't know what to expect, you start overthinking and worrying about it. And that's always worse than what actually ends up happening. If you are coming to the wedding, I want you to prioritise your own well-being. Don't feel like you need to conform to societal expectations. Don't feel you have to get in the crowd and have a laugh. You really don't. Just focus on what works best for you. And get in touch with me if you're nervous about anything. Because I can put your mind at rest. I will try and put your mind at rest. Honestly, I will. Why do we put ourselves through this, eh? It would be much easier just to sit at home, save the money from the wedding, buy a new TV, sit and watch that and not have to deal with people. Much less stressful. But it's like I was talking about, the fear is, as I'm always told by various people in the medical profession, it's in your head, Colin. Do you know what? In this instance, they've actually got a point. The anxiety is in there. How much of that anxiety ever really bears out into reality? The things that we fear, the things that we're scared of and nervous of, how many times does that actually come true? Yeah, it'd be easier to sit and watch TV all day and not go to a wedding, but what do you get from that? In a year's time, hopefully we'll be looking back and looking at the wedding video and the wedding photos and remembering the laughs, remembering the beautiful castle, the grounds, making new friends, dancing, eating. We'll be looking at memories that we were frightened of going to create. When you say that out loud, it makes anxiety sound crap, doesn't it? And useless. And I think it really is crap and useless, but I don't know how to stop it. I think if anybody did, they'd be very rich by now. So we've got to focus on making amazing memories. The posh hats and fancy frocks, that's just me and Sean. The bloke who dances really funny in his trainers. Who comes to a wedding in trainers? I don't know. The food, the laughs, the tears, making new friends, getting new phone numbers. It's worth the nervousness, I think, to be able to look back on all that. Well, at least it stayed sunny. There's plenty of showers about today, but we've been lucky. If I don't see you at the wedding, I'll see you on a live chat. If I don't see you on a live chat, I'll see you next time. Take care of yourself. Bye-bye.